After 1 week with the Nintendo Switch 2, I got a lot of things to say about it. Not only the games, the features, the accessories, the screen itself, the mouse controls, and so much more. Let's get straight into it. So, the Nintendo Switch 2, it has finally arrived a week later. And this console is really phenomenal. Not only has it sold 3.5 million units in 7 days. That right there is a crazy number, but it shows why. Because the games on it look absolutely amazing. If you look at a game like Cyberpunk 2077, now this game right here is a really hard game to run. And for it being in 30 FPS and 1080p, you barely even notice it. It's just such a nice looking game that you really look at the Switch too and you're like, wow, this thing is powerful. Then you move on to a game like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. You realize that you don't want to probably play the Nintendo Switch version ever again, because the loading times are so much faster. The nice FPS that you get for playing the game is really fantastic, and it makes you appreciate the power of the system. But also, not only that, but you get so much more joy in being able to see the surroundings, the visuals, and not having to see load chunks and a whole bunch of other problems that the Switch had. Not saying that the Switch is bad for any means, it's just having the upgrade, having the option that your game could look better or run better. That right there is a big bonus. It's really fantastic to see something like this. But also, on the Nintendo Switch 2, we got so many new upgrade and features. Now, it's not the type of features that you would have wanted from a Nintendo platform. And let's be honest, I would have liked to see themes, maybe even Miiverse, or even something else that would allow players to connect to one another across the world. Miiverse was a fantastic option for that. But with the Nintendo Switch 2, we don't have that. So that would be a little bit of my downside thoughts, my bad thoughts about the Switch 2. But right now, the good thoughts that I have, the games look absolutely amazing, and also the storytelling of the Nintendo Switch 2 is pretty great. It's telling you this is a more powerful system, and it shows you that with the Switch eShop. The Switch eShop is a really big mess right now, as you can see. You can't even load a single tab, and it's just overall a nightmare to explore. But the Nintendo Switch 2 eShop, on the other hand, is such a fantastic eShop that, honestly, maybe it forgives itself for not having any music. Because the speed on this eShop is really cool. You can go from one tab to the next tab really fast, and there's no load times between tabs. It instantly plays the trailer if the game has a trailer, and overall, that right there is really fantastic. So also, the Nintendo Switch Online type of eShop looking thing is a pretty interesting eShop. Now originally, when I went into this Switch Online application, I thought that it played music, but it was just trailers. But overall, it's really cool how it does kind of play music. You can go in there, listen to some music, and have a great time. Now, not only that, but mouse controls. Mouse controls are a really key part of the Nintendo Switch 2 and the experience that you will be getting. The mouse controls itself are so smooth and seamless that you can just plop it out your Switch and put it on the desk or whatever and start playing it. You can even use it as a mouse on your lap. It works perfectly fine. You might notice that sometimes the mouse just doesn't see the sensor right, but just make sure that you're placing it properly on your lap, not to like make it hang off the cliff. But overall, it works really fine, and you can use the mouse controls in so many different games. The one key game that I've been using the mouse controls in is Cyberpunk 2077. I love it so much. It's so good. It's so cool how you can just use the stick and then you have one hand with mouse. If you weren't a big fan of using keyboard and mouse as your main controller source, you can finally use just the mouse and then a controller in the other hand. It works perfect. Like, it's really, really good. And if you don't have a Nintendo Switch 2, or maybe you do have a Switch 2 and you didn't get to try out the mouse features because there's not many games right now that have the mouse feature, trust me, that right there is such a fantastic feature that you can just go ahead, use the mouse, and boom. Another game that really shows off the mouse is Fortnite. Now, believe it or not, you can actually use one hand on the controller and the other hand on the mouse as your main way to play the game. Now, you might have a little bit of a disadvantage against the competition, but overall, it's still really fine and awesome. Now, another thing that I thought that the Switch 2 really did well was, honestly, the photo album support kind of thing. Now, the photo album was a thing on the Switch that probably not many people took care about. But for me personally, I had an entire collection of photo albums. I took at least 10,000 pictures in a game. A lot of it was Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, a lot of it was Pokemon as well. And whenever I would find something cool in the game, just take a picture and then you can use that as your desktop background. But right now, the photo album is really cool, and it hasn't really changed much from the Nintendo Switch, but for some reason, I've noticed that it looks better, maybe because that's in more like 1080p instead of 720p, but whatever. It looks pretty awesome. Now, there's a lot of other features on the Switch 2 that I haven't really got to use yet because you need either friends to do it, or for some reason my game chat is stuck on parental controls and you can't undo it. It just says you need to hook up parental controls for some reason, which is really interesting, but I wasn't going to use game chat. Anyways, game sharing is pretty interesting. You need to be in your friend group or just a family group or whatever, and then there you go. You can start sharing your games and having fun with that. So overall, it's really cool. Another thing that I found that I really, really love about the Nintendo Switch 2 is the controllers. Now, the controllers itself is really interesting. So you might notice that if you remember the Nintendo Switch, you would search for your controller and it would start buzzing all over the place. It would just buzz. This time around, it's not really a buzz. It's more like a beep beep, beep beep, beep beep, and it sounds like a bomb's going off. But overall, that right there is so awesome because it's louder and you can easily find a Nintendo Switch controller if you lost it or something. Overall, that's really cool. Now, you can customize your own remote. Now, I don't actually have a Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller. I've been just using the Switch 1 Pro controller, which overall, it's really fantastic. You're able to just use a Nintendo Switch 1 Pro controller and Nintendo Switch 1 controller to your heart's content, and boom, it works perfectly. You don't need any of the extra button features that it does. But let's just say you did have a Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller. You get something really cool with the GL and the GR buttons, that being able to customize the back buttons and then use it for different things inside games is really cool. For example, if you want to use GR as a back button for drifting in Mario Kart World, well, you can go ahead and do that, and maybe it'll give you an edge on the competition. But overall, it's got so much to see. Now, the system settings is where it takes a little bit of a turn. So, inside the Switch system, you might notice that you're able to actually change the battery in a way. Now, you can make it so it stops charging at 90%, and there you go. You can even make it so it stays at 100% and just keeps draining the battery or keeps charging the battery. But overall, I've noticed some problems with this system. So, if you have a setting on, or maybe even if you don't have the setting on, you'll notice that your charging just suddenly stops charging, even though it's not fully charged. Mine right now, I have the setting on that should stop at 90%, but instead, it stopped at 81%. So that right there is a little bit of an inconvenience. But as well as the battery, for some reason, seems to be at 1%, but lasts for like another 10-20 minutes. So it doesn't really actually tell you the right battery percentage. And this is where it actually is a problem. Because what if you're in the middle of a game and it doesn't have autosaves? Well, then you're not quite sure when to get yourself a charger, or you're not quite sure, it's not going to warn you again if your battery is at 1%, you're trying to find the charger, you're trying to look around for it. What if it's not there? That's one of my big major concerns about the system and the battery life. Hopefully, it's just going to be some kind of update that you can do and just update the system. But overall, it's pretty interesting thing. Now, I like the support that you're able to use HDR output, which is really, really great, by the way. HDR is pretty cool and it makes the screen look really nice. Now, if you decided, like I was being an idiot because I wanted to test out Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom just to see what they would look like on two different Switches, let's just say I just ruined my experience. So I thought that the HDR would make it better than the OLED screen. Yeah, let's just say that right there wasn't the case. And, you know, one of them's brighter and the other one's just darker. But you can take a look at that. Overall, it's pretty interesting. The 4K support is there if you have a 4K television, which I do not. So let's be honest. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom still look pretty beautiful. Pretty much any game still looks beautiful with just no 4K support. Eventually, if you wanted to, you can upgrade to the 4K support. But right now, the Switch itself is pretty awesome. And to my knowledge, there's not that many games that use the 4K, the full 4K, which is fine. Another thing was inside of the trailer, Nintendo stated that this will be able to do 120 Hz output. Right now, that is not the case. There's not too many games that even use 120 Hz. I don't even think there's one game that uses 120 Hz output. So overall, that right there is a little bit saddening. Maybe we'll see some kind of update in the future. But also, another thing that I really do enjoy or like is the fact that you can lock your system. Let's just say that you're going somewhere else or there's a whole bunch of people at your house for some reason. And maybe you don't want them to touch your Switch. Well, you can just plop down a lock key and there you go. You need to use a password to unlock the system itself. That right there is such a good thing because then, you know, no one can touch your Switch. No one can touch your save data. Try to play a joke on you and delete your save data. Whatever the case may be, that right there is a good thing. Originally on the Switch 1, you would need parental controls to actually enable this feature. But now it's actually a main feature that you can do. I haven't actually used it, but you can still use it. Amiibo functionality is still there. You can map your Mii. You can take your existing Mii and then just plop it down into the Switch 2, which is pretty cool. And Mii's itself, you can create your own Mii. I kind of wish it was an application again, like the Wii U, the 3DS, the Wii. But, you know, it's kind of sad. And the themes itself, kind of wish that we got themes at some point. And, you know, it would have been great. But overall, the things that I've said is pretty much the bad things mixed with the good things. Now, 1 week later, is the system good? Yeah, of course. I think that the system is really, really fantastic. This system has a lot to offer, and the games that it's included are pretty great. Now, maybe should the Switch system be a little bit more polished up? The GameCube app. Now, the GameCube app is another thing. This is one thing that I was really, really excited for. But now that we finally did get it, it's a little bit of a thing. So you go inside the GameCube app, you want to play The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. You might notice that your controls are inverted. Now that right there is a thing that hopefully they'll fix in the future. I think Nintendo is actually working on it. But just for now, just in case you wanted to know, your controls are inverted. You can change it though by just going to the system and then opening up controllers. But you're going to have to do a lot of playing around with the controllers because for some reason they always want to go from left is right, right is left, and you try to change that and it'll just keep going back there. But if you start spamming on the stick, making it go up instead of, you know, there, it'll eventually remap itself to what you actually want it to do. So overall, really, really an interesting thing there. But overall, the Nintendo Switch 2 is a fantastic console, and you can play all your Switch 1 libraries, and also, most of them will get upgrades. Even though Nintendo hasn't actually confirmed, oh, these games are going to get an upgrade, these games are whatever. It actually does get an upgrade. Like some of them, the games just load faster. Others, the game looks nicer, the FPS is there. It's uncapped, or it's just cap, but instead of frame dropping, you get just a stable, nice 30 FPS, which is pretty great. So, you know, you can kind of use the full experience of Nintendo Switch. Eventually, I believe Nintendo will release some kind of patch for most of the games, or games that are really popular, maybe like The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, or other games that are good, maybe Pokemon Sword and Shield, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, or something like that. We're probably going to be seeing some kind of update for those games in the future. But overall, for right now, I think that the Nintendo Switch 2 is a really great system. And I've shared with you things that I dislike a bit about the system, but I'm not saying that the system's bad in any means. I think it's a great system, and it does what it intended to do. Play games. And the games that you can play on there, pretty great. The games that are coming soon, even awesome. There's a new Splatoon game that's coming soon, which is, you know, a remake kind of thing, or not a remake, but like a spin-off game. There we go. That's coming soon. A Splatoon 3 update is coming soon, which might enable mouse controls, which would be really awesome. But overall, this is some things that I think that are really great about the Nintendo Switch 2. It's a fantastic system. It's got a lot to offer, and you know, it's just great. Anyways, what do you think about the Nintendo Switch 2? Do you think that it's a great system? Do you think it's a bad system by any means? Do you think that there's things that could have been improved about the Switch 2? Let me know in the comments section down below, and thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've been having a great time with your Nintendo Switch 2, or you just like watching Nintendo console or content. Thank you so much. And with that being said, I hope you have a fantastic day. Consider to hit the like button, maybe subscribing. That is completely up to you. I post a lot of different Nintendo style content, maybe Pokemon, Zelda, and even Mario Kart, or even Nintendo news that I find interesting. If there is a lot of news, I will just pack it all into one video. And yeah, anyways, thank you so much. Hope you have a fantastic day, and see you in the next one.